number of members needed for division to take place in the House this afternoon. Some of the bills include the Heritage and Museums Bill. This is by Senator Dr. Alice Milgo. There's also the County Oversight and Accountability Bill. This is by Senator Ledama Olekina. There's also the Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 37 of 2021. This one is by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. The other bill that is set to be read for the second time and also set to see the House go on division is the County Government's Amendment Bill. That is by Honorable Senator Moses Kajwang. Again, this afternoon, there are also a number of bills that will see the House proceed on a committee of the whole. These bills include the Natural Resources Benefit Sharing Bill. This one is by Honorable Senator Dr. Agnes Zani. We also have the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill. Then there's also the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, the Prompt Payment Bill, and the Startup Bill. We'll see the House proceed on a committee of the whole this afternoon. At the entrance of the chambers of the Senate House, the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Kenneth Lusaka, has just stepped in to oversee this afternoon's session. I will now hand you over to the live broadcast. Good afternoon. My name is Kamche Menza.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the clerk by Mr. Daniel Waturu, a resident of Kinamba, Laikipia County, concerning radio frequency interference of Sawanga FM by Sidai FM. As you are aware, Article 119.1 of the Constitution states that every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. Honorable Senators, the salient issues raised in the petition are: 1, that Sawanga FM is a community radio station operated by the residents of Kinamba, Ngarwa subdivision in Laikipia County. The objective of the station is to broadcast to the residents of Kinamba in local languages on matters pertaining to development, education, farming, pastoralism, female genital mutilation, FGM, cattle rustling, and encouraging the community to live peacefully. That in the year 2015, Sawanga FM was assigned the frequency 990 MHZ by the Communications Authority of Kenya, CAK, and started broadcasting on 16th September 2019 in Kiswahili, Kikuyu, Kalenjin, and Turkana languages, while observing all legal and regulatory requirements as stipulated by CAK. Three, that in March 2019, Sidai FM, a commercial radio station located in Narok County, installed a powerful transmitter close to Sawanga FM station and started broadcasting using the frequency 990 MHZ, which had been assigned to Sawanga FM. As a result, the Sawanga FM broadcasting was affected, and the station started receiving complaints from its customers. Four, that the Sawanga FM raised an official complaint to the CAK, who confirmed the veracity of their complaint by sending their technical personnel. However, no action has been taken by CAK to rectify the situation. That the ownership of Sawanga FM has appealed to the ownership of Sidai FM with a view to having the situation rectified with no success. That the interference of broadcasting to Sawanga FM by Sidai FM has denied a large community their right to information, education, and entertainment which they enjoyed from Sawanga FM. And that Sawanga FM has suffered losses as a result of loss of revenue from advertising, as well as listeners as a result from the complaint by Sidai FM. That the petitioner has made the best effort to have this matter addressed by the relevant authorities, all which have failed to give a satisfactory response. The petitioner therefore prays that the Senate investigates this matter with a view to recommending that the Sawanga FM station retains its frequency without interference by Sidai FM, and the Sawanga FM is compensated for the losses occasioned by interruption of broadcast by Sidai FM. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order number 231, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Cleophas Malala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's time to comment on the petition from Laikipia County pertaining the hacking of the frequencies of a radio station by one other radio station. Mr. Speaker, I think the mandate of the Communication Authority of Kenya is to regulate the media world, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as we are headed to elections, I think it is very important for the Communications Authority and the Media Council to ensure that they implement all the regulations as pertains to the ICT Act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this does not only stop at radio stations, Mr. Speaker. We have seen even our personal phones being hacked by people who are purported to be in prison, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, privacy of personal information is very important, Mr. Speaker, and therefore it calls for the regulatory bodies, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that they ensure everything as pertains to protection of personal information or business information is applied to the latter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, community radios or community TV stations are very important in our society as for now. They disseminate relevant information to the society. They educate the society. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, the people in the villages do not wait even to listen to mainstream media. They depend on community radios, Mr. Speaker. They depend on community televisions. It is important for this House to know that community radios are not even allowed to advertise, to do commercial advertisement, and therefore they do not have even a source of income. And hacking their system is doing a lot of injustice to them, Mr. Speaker. They need to be protected. We have so many community radios which are not commercial radios, which need to be protected. We know that we exist in a world of competition, but that does not mean that those small community radios be treated differently, Mr. Speaker. It is very important for this House and the Committee on ICT, Mr. Speaker, to look into the matter seriously and protect not only that specific community radio station, but also other community radio stations. We have the code on which community radios operate on, Mr. Speaker. We need to ensure that these community radios and TV stations are protected adequately. We have seen learning institutions, Mr. Speaker, universities coming up with community radios, Mr. Speaker. And these offer a good platform for our young people to have experience, Mr. Speaker. We have seen young people going and rising up from community radios to mainstream media, Mr. Speaker. An example in my area is the Must FM, which started with only 2 presenters. As we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, Must FM in Kakamega has a very wide audience, Mr. Speaker. It started from the ward in which I was an MCA called Mayakalo Ward. As we speak right now, Must FM is being heard even up to Nandi County. And therefore, it is important for this House and for the Committee on ICT to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, we protect that specific community radio in Laikipia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I finish, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at all the radio stations, Mr. Speaker. Let them be ethical as they conduct their duty, Mr. Speaker. We have seen radio stations across the country, some propagating hate speech, especially the vernacular radio stations, Mr. Speaker. They incite their respective communities as we head for the elections. We need all the prosecutory organs or all the agencies which are dealing with the cohesion and integration in this country, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that they monitor, especially the vernacular radios, Mr. Speaker, so that we do not propagate hate as we head to the elections. The main aim of broadcasting information in this country should be to ensure that we disseminate information that is going to help this country. We disseminate information that is going to ensure that we uplift the living standards of our people. Mr. Speaker, nowadays I don't hear programs that educate our young people. When you switch on a radio station, you will listen to political debates only, Mr. Speaker. We want to have a regulation, Mr. Speaker, in future, which compels all these media houses to protect a certain segment for specifically education, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I was growing up, we used to have Swahili lessons on KBC. Nowadays, we don't listen to such programs. When you switch on KBC, when you switch on Citizen, when you switch on Nyota FM, you just hear that, Bungoma governor, incoming governor, so and so was in certain village, Mr. Speaker. We want to have information which is going to help our community. So many young people nowadays, Mr. Speaker, are addicted to social media. We cannot even control the young ones. You find a 5-year-old child, Mr. Speaker, accessing information on the internet, which they should not be accessing, Mr. Speaker, just because they are idle. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the content which the media is broadcasting must be looked into seriously. The Films Commission, Mr. Speaker, headed by Mutua, Mr. Speaker, should look into the content of these radio stations. We should not just give them a free space to broadcast whatever they want to broadcast. We have seen some programs, Mr. Speaker, which are embarrassing. Sometimes you sit in your living room with your children, but the programs which are being broadcasted cannot be consumed in a family setup. These are the issues as the ICT is looking into this petition. These are the issues that they should open up and ensure as we head to the next general election. Let us supervise the content the media houses are broadcasting to our generation. Otherwise, I want to join that petitioner, Mr. Speaker, in ensuring that we adjudicate this matter and in good time, Mr. Speaker, because this is unfair for radio station, Mr. Speaker, to hack into another radio station's frequency, Mr. Speaker. All this is business space which should be respected, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we'd like to call upon the chairperson on ICT to look into this matter in good time and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that the petitioner gets justice. Otherwise, I want to thank and implore upon Kenyans in this in our country, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that whatever you have, our standing orders are very clear. Let us adjudicate whatever petition you have. We have several petitions, Mr. Speaker, and I don't think this House can fail to adjudicate on matters, and especially matters which touches on devolution. Mr. Speaker, as I speak right now, Kakamega County Assembly is having squabbles, Mr. Speaker, and therefore such matters should not fail to get onto the floor of this House and into the committees of this House to ensure that we help our devolved units stabilize, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and may God bless you.
You are actually becoming irrelevant. Senator Chila Yako.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senator Malala has spoken about everything and anything communication. But Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to this very important topic. Mr. Speaker, we are told time and time again that information is power. In order to access information and be powerful, if information is power, then there must be a media or a medium through which you access such information. Information velocity in communities is passed through community radio stations. So, Mr. Speaker, the important role community radio stations play in empowering people with knowledge, with information, cannot be overemphasized. This is something we know, and this is something that we must jealously defend. In fact, in developed societies, you have even freedom to be wrong. So the content of information should not be criminalized. The content of information should not be punished. In fact, people should be encouraged to get to know what is correct and distinguish it from what is not correct. So the whole idea of having a regulatory framework is not to mute, it is not to discourage the flow of information. It is supposed to encourage the orderly growth and enhance velocity of information that is consumed by our people. So as this committee looks at what we have before us, I want the committee to find out how is the CA, how is the regulatory authority enhancing communication, enhancing the velocity of the information that is being circulated. Not how it is clamping down on radio stations or how one thing is cannibalizing another thing. So it is important to have a regulatory framework not to hamper our freedom of speech or our freedom of information, but to regulate the way we utilize that freedom, to promote the utilization of that freedom, and to ensure that there are ethics and values that are protected within the environment that communication is shared. So I hope that the committee will, when reporting, tell us whether there are mechanisms to have radio stations set up everywhere, including every village. I am happy that we have a few in Migori. I am unhappy that there is no motivation or encouragement for people to open them up. And I am happy that without a free and alternative ways of consuming or receiving information, a society gets poorer. You get to do things the wrong way. You get not to know what is available that could be of use to you. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people of Laikipia. I want to thank the petitioner for raising this matter. I hope that the manner in which it will be resolved will increase velocity of and intensity of information, and the regulatory arrangement that is being pursued will not take us back to the dark ages. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Moses Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for an opportunity to contribute in support of this petition by one Daniel Waturu from Laikipia County. Mr. Speaker, Article 34 of the Constitution provides inter alia that the media shall enjoy freedom and that broadcasting and other electronic media are freedom of establishment subject only to licensing procedures that are necessary to regulate the airwaves and other forms of signal distribution and are independent of control of government, political interests, or commercial interess, and that the state shall not exercise control over or interfere with any person engaged in broadcasting, the production or circulation of any publication, or the dissemination of information by any medium, and the state shall not penalize any person for any opinion or views aired in the media. Now, Mr. Speaker, CAK is the regulator, and fortunately, one of the chairman of CAK is an immediate former senator, and the CEO is an immediate former CEO of IEBC. And I hope they are listening. That, Mr. Speaker, community radios have become a critical tool in the management of community affairs in matters of security, mobilization of resources, mobilization of social welfare groups, and so on and so forth. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when our Committee of Security visited Laikipia, one of the things we learned is that there are local FM stations that make regular broadcasts that even issues warnings and alerts when bandits from the valleys are coming to raid and rustle their cattle. Now, to have one radio station taking up and jamming the frequency of another radio station is a criminal act, Mr. Speaker. And CAK, as the regulator, must ensure that when you license a radio station or a TV station, you collect revenue from the proprietors, and you have a corresponding duty to make sure that the frequency allocated to them is safe and cannot be interfered with, and any other licensee of another frequency should neither mute nor overlap nor jam the frequency for which a citizen or a group of citizens have paid money to the government and must enjoy that freedom. So this petition, Mr. Speaker, is not the only one of its kind. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when you listen to FM stations, and this, the Committee of ICT must call CAK to order. Because, Mr. Speaker, you can be listening to an FM station, and out of the blues, another FM station jumps in. So you start listening to very jumbled and muffled voices that you can't quite tell what is being broadcast. Or you are listening to music on one FM station and music from another bashes in and distorts everything you are listening to. So CAK, Mr. Speaker, must take stock of how many radio stations, whether local or national, whether vernacular or using national languages of English and Swahili, have been licensed, how many frequencies have been given to individuals. We also know some individuals, Mr. Speaker, who have actually taken more frequencies than they need to block others from accessing these frequencies. And this is the duty of Communications Commission of Kenya. If they did their work well, Mr. Speaker, there should not be any case in this country where no area can access radio broadcasts. You remember, Mr. Speaker, in the old days, when we had only one station called Voice of Kenya. In fact, when we were at the university, we used to joke that it was called the Noise of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, Voice of Kenya used to be a monopoly broadcast what they want, malign who they want, black out who they want, but with the freedom that came with the liberalization of airwaves and the rundown to the 2010 Constitution, things like what we see in this petition must be part of our history, not part of our contemporary behavior. And I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that the Committee of ICT must summon the CAK leadership and call them to order to ensure that whoever is licensed and has paid revenue to broadcast material subject to acceptable content must enjoy the fruits of that license without any undue interference from a competitor, whether maliciously or otherwise. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it makes a whole nonsense of the idea of licensing a radio station and then making it impossible to function. Then it does not make sense at all. And I want to urge that the Committee of ICT, when seized with this matter, must not only deal with this Laikipia problem, but also address issues and direct CAK to carry out a proper audit across the country to ensure that every licensee to practice and run a broadcasting station, whether radio or TV, enjoys unlimited and uninterrupted broadcasts to the people of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Petronila.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity also to make a comment on the petition to the Senate by Mr. Daniel Waturu concerning radio frequency interference of Sawanga FM by Sidai FM. Mr. Speaker, from time immemorial, radio has been declared severally as the most effective tool for communication in educating, informing, and entertaining people. When it is a community radio, it has even a more effective impact on people. We are on the issues of farming, for example, even making people live peacefully, like what has been happening in Laikipia. When you have a radio station like Sawanga FM, then you are able to communicate to people the right message so that people can live harmoniously. You will be able to communicate issues of cattle rustling, issues of fight over the scarce resources in an area like Laikipia. So, Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues in encouraging Sidai FM to have a proper dialogue with the Sawanga FM so they can reach an amicable solution. That said, Mr. Speaker, as a member of the ICT committee, and I'm glad that the chair of ICT committee is here, he will be able to take up this matter and deal with it effectively. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, so I don't get prejudiced as a member of the committee, I'll stop there and support the petition. Thank you.
What's your point of order, Senator Ajila Yako?
Mr. Speaker, this is a very important topic. And the chair of ICT was involved in a very animated discussion, not hearing the weighty points that are being raised here. Would I be in order to request him to follow this? This is very key.
The chair has heard. Okay. What's your point of order, Senator Ndiritu?
Mr. Speaker, just to inform my colleague that I am a member of ICT committee and I was discussing with the chairman this important statement. We were discussing it, Chair.
What's your point of order, Senator Wetangula?
Mr. Speaker, our standing orders prohibit members from standing on frivolous points of order or giving information and guising it as a point of order. Mr. Speaker, are you satisfied that the distinguished senator for Laikipia was on a point of order? He was pursuing a misadventure that is far from a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Actually, it was not a point of order. So you are ruled out of order. Senator Abdullahi Ali.
Mr. Speaker, it's good that you have informed one of your panel members that they should not stand on frivolous point of orders. I don't know otherwise how they will take care of the House in the absence of this substantive Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the petition that it's unfortunate that is it called the Commission is giving out wavelengths, or what do you call it, frequencies to different radio stations. You are told that the 90 which Sawanga was using before, another radio station was given the same frequency, and then they do it on the same wavelength, which are the same frequency, Mr. Speaker. This is very sad. I just read through here that Sawanga was formed by a CBO from a certain Ngarua sub-county in Laikipia. So obviously, from my understanding of that area, they have already stated that it was telling the people in Kikuyu, Turkana, Kiswahili. Is there a reason why a radio station from Narok should come there? Is there some community in that area which was denied to be part of Sawanga? Was that a reason? Without prejudice, Mr. Speaker, don't want to go into what really caused this, but I will ask the committee to look into it fairly and see what caused that, because I don't understand why the Commission should give a frequency to a radio station in Narok to come to Laikipia to come and announce, and overshadow the other one. So obviously there's something fishy here. The committee members, including the senator for Laikipia, should look into this and tell us why a radio station from Narok comes all the way to Laikipia to overshadow, unless there's something else there. So look into it and tell us what's really going on. Thank you. And we want fairness, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Langat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for also giving me this opportunity to support this particular petition. And I want to say that it is quite unfair that the Sawanga radio station or Radio FM has been shortchanged by, I think, Sedai FM in one way or another. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that media houses are so important in what they do. And whenever they deviate from the same, the disaster is equal to what they could do very well to the society. I'm always aware that the functions of the mainstream media is always to educate the society in whatever is happening. More often than not, also in weekly basis, they also do set agenda that people normally discuss in terms of participating and contribution of ideas. So if any radio station can set an agenda in a different context, that one is grievous. And I want to say, unless these particular media stations are fully controlled according to the law or regulated by the CAK, Mr. Speaker, they can do more damaging things than they can do good. I remember in 2007, on post-election violence, you remember very well, Mr. Speaker, that most of the local radio stations were actually vindicated on the same. The way they were broadcasting in an unprofessional way, castigated or emotively raised suspicion and even encouraged the post-election violence. So I want to say that they must be regulated and controlled. For example, this one already, which their frequencies overlap with the frequencies of another radio station. They can do grievous things, which actually the burden will be transferred to another one, which is not actually a victim. So I want to support this particular petition and say that the committee, it's very it's very important today that the chairman of the committee is around, and I know he will take it seriously because he is also a participant in a way. He owns some radio station, and before he is affected on the same, he should act in a proactive way so that he can settle the matter. So I want to say, Chair, Mr. Speaker, that I support fully this particular petition, and I sympathize with this particular radio station because of the struggles they have gone through seeking for assistance in one way or another, but all in vain. But I want to thank them that they have brought the issue to the right place. I am so happy that people still regard Senate so high as a panacea to most of the issues that are affecting them. So I want to say, as senators, we should continue upholding our status in the society because the society still trusts us. Imagine after going all these stages and they have not been assisted, they have looked at the Senate as the only hope. So I'm sure the chair is here, and permanent solution to this particular problem will be arrived at as soon as this particular petition get to his hands. Thank you. I support this particular petition.
Senator Nderitu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I want to confirm that Sawanga FM is in Laikipia, and they have been operating with that frequency of 99 until when Sidai came and took those the same frequency. Mr. Speaker, it bothers me that the ACK are supposed to be sure when they are allocating their frequencies, they should know this frequency is owned by so-and-so, then they don't double allocate. After they allocated the same to Sidai FM, now we are having problem in Laikipia because Sawanga FM has been communicating to many people in terms of educating people in Ngarua, in people in Swipili or Moran, in Nyahururu, all the way to Salama in Mutara. And after this frequency was allocated to Sidai FM, Mr. Speaker, we have these every time there is interruption, bringing into losses of people of Sawanga FM. It's a CBO, it started as a CBO, so it is for the community, Mr. Speaker. All what I want to say is that the committee ran by the chair, Gideon Moi, they must deal with this matter to the bitter end so that the people of Laikipia and especially the owners of Sawanga can have their fair share, because they are paying for the frequencies but they are not getting value for money. They have been doing their work properly, educating people in terms of female genital mutilation, educating people about agriculture. And until when Sidai took over, now it's becoming difficult for them to communicate. They're ending up losing money. So, Mr. Speaker, this matter must be handled quickly and diligently so that people of Sawanga FM can get their fair share. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate the petitioner for bringing this matter to the Senate and having confidence in the process of the Senate. And I'm happy this issue of radio frequencies, Mr. Speaker. If you have noticed, there is irregular access to radio frequencies. Sometimes when you are driving across various regions, there is interference. Other radio frequencies interfere more than others. So I think the Commission Authority of Kenya, CAK, should tell Kenyans, because we know the coverage of radio in this country is very, very high. Mr. Speaker, when you move across the country, across the nation, the more accessible listenership is through the radio frequency. Mr. Speaker, we appreciate the fact that there is always online frequency that is being used through social media platforms. That is the new aspect in terms of listenership to the radio programs. But Mr. Speaker, the Committee of ICT led by Senator Gideon Moi who is here should be able to assist the country and talk with CAK, especially as we move to the general elections, Mr. Speaker. We know as we go into general elections, there will be many people who are using radios either for political campaigns, for campaign advertisements, and many others, Mr. Speaker. And we know the ghosts of ICC, Mr. Speaker. And if you look at the history of genocide of Rwanda, most of the spread of attacks of genocide was used through radio. So if we do not have proper regulation and allocation of frequency, and we issue frequency in not a proper manner, Mr. Speaker, it means that somebody who is a ghost can open a radio frequency and use to as an incitement or create inflammatory across the country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to call upon the Committee of ICT to rein on CAK. Let them allocate frequency based on many factors, based on frequency, whether it has been given to other radio stations, whether that region has been allocated a slot, whether they meet the certain standards, whether even, as we finally, Mr. Speaker, whether they will maintain political sanity as we go into 2022 general election, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I really hope and believe that within 60 days, as stipulated by standing orders, the petitioner, Mr. Speaker, should be able to get feedback and should be able to get the report. We don't want to see the petition for Viga, the issue of Maseno that came back yesterday, Mr. Speaker, where the committee had stayed with the petition from one and a half years. So, Mr. Speaker, we hope that when it comes back, it should come back within 60 days so that the petitioner, Mr. Speaker, can be very happy and see that justice has been done to them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Finally, Senator Milgo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to also add my voice to this petition. And let me thank my chair, ICT, for... I'm no longer a member of ICT. Yeah, for doing this, and I'm sure he'll be able to follow this to the letter. Mr. Speaker, sir, when it comes to issues of media plays a critical role in actually creating awareness in the society in very many issues. Like it gives information, like when it comes to issues like currently what is going on in the country, in the chat that was just concluded was for the registration. And you'd go across various areas and know that some people are not heard. But whenever we have media working very well, such information can be disseminated very quickly. And in addition to that one, media normally connects people and normally, in this case, encourages them on the way even to treat others, to behave, to create peace, and even avoid conflicts. Mr. Speaker, sir, when it comes to this particular case of Sawakanga FM, that is meddling around with the frequencies of Laikipia County, this actually causes a lot of challenges because we know the listenership to the Laikipia FM, in this case, are losing out on what they would otherwise be listening to each and every day. And maybe they do not even understand the language, for that matter, that is being that is coming through the current FM. Mr. Speaker, sir, Communications Authority of Kenya is a culprit because in most cases, I was a long time for a long time I was a member of ICT, and I did realize that they would promise that they are actually controlling frequencies in such areas. They would promise that they have even distributed 2G frequencies, and when you go to such areas, you find that there was nothing. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you'd go to areas like Malapa, for example, and Turkana areas, the northern areas, you find that there is a lot of overlap of frequencies from Uganda and Kenya, and in most cases, normally people are put in the dark when it comes to listening to news or even information that would otherwise have assisted them in very many ways. I am sure that this petition will be sent to the ICT committee, and Senator Gideon Moi is equal to the task. I know how we normally handle issues very well, and I know he'll get to the root cause of this matter and be able to establish so that the Laikipia people and those from the other Maasai region I will not come in conflict again about issues FM or in this case media, while at the same time they have been in conflicts when it comes to issues and cattle rustling. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition.
Okay, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order number 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Information and Communication. In terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Senator Gideon Moy.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 18th November 2021. 1. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Laikipia County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2020. 2. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Laikipia County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020. 3. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kwale County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2020. 4. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kwale County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020. 5. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kilifi County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2020. 5. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kilifi County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020. 6. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nyeri County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2020. 7. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nyeri County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020. 8. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Taita Taveta County Assembly on the year ended 30th June 2020. 9. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Taita Taveta County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020. 10. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of West Pokot County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2020. And finally, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of West Pokot County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2020.
Okay, thank you, Senator Gideon. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Okay, I don't see those who are to give notice, so we defer the 2 notices of motion. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Okay. Statement, Senator Isaac Ngugi Githu. Not there, deferred. It's online, okay. Senator Ngugi. Okay, we defied. Senator Taita Taveta, Senator Jones Mwaruma. Senator Mwaruma. Senator Mwaruma. A challenge. There seems to be a challenge. Okay. Senator Beatrice Kwamboka. Not there. Senator Christopher Lagat. So it'll be further. This one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I rise pursuant to the Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding claims of discrimination against locals on job opportunities by Bomet University. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee should, 1, investigate claims of discrimination by the university administration regarding the sacking of non-skilled locals who have been working as casuals since the inception of the university and have since been replaced by non-locals. Number 2, the committee should state whether the recruitments at the institutions have met the criteria of regional and ethnic balance as is required by Articles 10, 2B, 27.4, 56C, and 232.1, H, and 1 of the Constitution. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, they should provide a comprehensive details of the employees with regard to the rank, designation, and ethnic origin. And lastly, they should outline measures taken by the Commission of University Education, if any, to intervene where there has been blatant disregard of the law in recruitments at the University of Bomet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Malala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information.
Order, Senator Langat.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Information and Technology regarding the funding of the Konza Data Center and Smart City and its construction by Chinese telecoms company Huawei. In the statement, the committee should, 1, outline the total cost of the project, indicating how much has been paid so far, if any, and the outstanding balance, including any interest payable. 2, explain the circumstances under which the Chinese lender made direct payment of 4.4 billion of the government fund from foreign borrowing to Huawei Telecoms Company. 3, explain why the said foreign borrowing was not paid into the consolidated fund as required by Article 206 of the Constitution. 4, explain why the said foreign borrowing was not appropriated and withdrawn in line with Article 222 and 223 of the Constitution. 5, state the reason why the financing agreement for the Konza Data Center was signed on 19th April 2019 during the Belt and Road Initiative Forum, almost 2 years after the contract award date of 22nd June 2017. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, ascertain that the country will get value for money for the project, which is a Kenya Vision 2030 flagship project. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Malala. I don't see any interest. Senator Chararge here.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to stand and support the statement by Senator Malala by saying two things. One is that this is an outright violation of the Constitution. And I think if this, as he has indicated, that the Constitution was followed in terms of borrowing and many other aspects into consolidated fund, Mr. Speaker, this is a clear violation of the Constitution. Number two, Mr. Speaker, when we approach development partners and we borrow, the money that being borrowed, Mr. Speaker, should be used in the right use, Mr. Speaker. The development of concert city and smart cities is the way to go, especially to decongest cities like Nairobi, cities like Eldoret, like Kisumu, like Nakuru. That is the future. When you, Mr. Speaker, when you travel across the globe, they are coming up smart cities. So if somebody somewhere in Konsa or any other are misusing funding that we are taking, and Mr. Speaker, the sad part is that this money that is being borrowed, Mr. Speaker, all Kenyans will pay for it. So if someone somewhere is misusing and abusing and corruptly this amount that has been borrowed, Mr. Speaker, of a payment of 4.4 billion, that is very unfortunate. And I hope if we had a functional DCI and DPP and EACC, someone would be behind the bus, Mr. Speaker. And I hope they would be as swift as the way they did to the former Commissioner of Prisons, Mr. Ogola. I wish that swiftness could be applied to such issues. We would have seen many people facing serious issues, Mr. Speaker. And the DCI, Mr. Speaker, finally, is that before they take anybody to court, I wish they would do investigation so that in future, Mr. Speaker, people are not taken to court without proper investigation. But let's hope that swiftness that we saw yesterday in Magereza House can be applied elsewhere, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Next order. Okay, Senator Cherargei, why are you standing up? We have statements. Chair Finance is not there, so I defer. Chair Health is not there, I defer. The Chair Standing Committee on Information is ready. Senator Gideon.
Mr. Speaker, so I wish, pursuant to Standing Order 51, to make a statement on the activities of the Standing Committee on Information and Technology for the period commencing 1st July to 15th November 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period under review, our committee held a total of 18 sittings, considered 3 statements, 1 bill, and engaged with various stakeholders on issues pertinent to the ICT sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee met with the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, and the Committee and the Commission on Administrative of Justice to consider the statement on the status of the access to information regulations.
Yes, Senator Gideon, I think the senators are saying they can't hear you well, so maybe you raise your voice a bit.
Volume.
And you're in charge of volumes. So.
Yes. On the status of the Access to Information regulation under the Access to Information Act, as requested by Senator Samson Cherargei. The committee noted a challenge to the operationalization of the Act, where the regulation-making authority is vested in the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of ICT, while the implementation and reporting of the Act is vested in the Commissioner on Administrative Justice, which is administered from the State Law Office. The committee resolved to rectify this challenge by sponsoring an amendment to the bill, the proposed Access to Information Amendment Bill 2021, which is ready for publication. Mr. Speaker, sir, subsequently, the committee considered The statement on the protection of personal data by technology companies as requested by Senator Samson Cherargei. The committee met with the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of ICT and the Office of the Data Protection Commission. The committee is happy to report that the measures are in place to ensure the security of the personal data of all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee is currently considering a statement on alleged monopolistic practices by telecommunications company Safaricom PLC as requested by Senator Petronila Were Logorio from Baringo County. To this end, the committee has met with the Competition Authority of Kenya, mobile networks operators, Airtel Kenya, Telcom Kenya, Safaricom Limited, and the Ministry of ICT, of Innovation and Youth Affairs. 7, the issue of competition in Kenya's telecommunications sector is a recurrent issue that calls for continuous interrogation as mobile phone penetration in the country stands high. At the heart of this matter is ensuring that Kenyans across the country have affordable access to all mobile networks. The committee is set to meet with the National Treasury and the Central Bank of Kenya to delve into the issues of mobile money interoperability. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee considered and passed without amendment the Office of the County Printer Bill 2021. The bill seeks to establish the office of the county printer in each county, which shall be responsible for printing and publishing a county gazette, as well as advising the county government on all matters relating to printing and publication of documents. 9, with respect to regulations, the committee held a retreat with the Office of the Data Protection Commission to review draft regulations, namely the Data Protection General Regulations 2021, the Data Protection Regulations 2021, the Data Protection Compliance and Enforcement Regulations 2021. The regulations that are in draft format and the first regulations towards the operationalization of the Data Protection Act 2019 and the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the execution of its oversight mandate over the ICT sector, the committee resolved to periodically meet with semi-autonomous government agencies and the committee to oversight. In the period under review, the committee met with the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication to deliberate on the progress of the institute. The committee noted achievements of the institute, including the launch of a radio station, but took note that there is room to innovate and improve offerings from the school through collaboration with stakeholders in the mass media. 11, the committee conducted an inspection visit to Consular Technopolis. This was a follow-up visit from the committee's first visited in 2018. The committee noted significant progress in the implementation of Phase 1 of the Consular Master Plan, including the completion and occupation of the office block and most notably the operationalization of the National Data Center that is available for use by government agency. 12, the committee met with the Commission Authority of Kenya, CAK, to deliberate on the status of connectivity in the county in relation to election preparedness. As this House is aware, the committee of the 12th Parliament made connectivity that enables a minimum of second generation 2G for every Kenyan its primary priority. Mr. Speaker, this is even more paramount as the country prepares to issue licenses for the 5th generation 5G connection. We are happy to report that with the implementation of Phase 2 of the Universal Service Fund, USF, funded last mile connectivity projects, only 279 sub-locations will have less than 50% coverage. Mr. Speaker, sir, as innovation in technology is largely private sector driven, the committee has been committed to creating a conducive conducive policy and regulatory environment for business to thrive. The committee has engaged with digital taxi hiring service providers on the proposed National Transport and Safety Authority Transport Network Company regulations. Private players, both local and international, have made submissions to the committee alongside other players in the sector. The committee notes that 15 concerns with the regulations are multi-sectoral, cutting across technology, transportation, and labor issues. It noted that the disruptions in the transportation industry are a glimpse of larger disruptions set to occur in every industry. This case study will set a tone and influence national dialogue on the future of work and gig work. Mr. Speaker, sir, concerning agri-tech, the committee met with liquid intelligence technologies who are deploying Internet of Things, IoT-based solutions to enable smart agriculture. In the context of climate change, agri-tech presents an opportunity to revolutionize agriculture and improve yields through sustainable agriculture. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the 6th session of the 12th Parliament, the committee intends to conclude the statement on alleged monopolistic practice by Safaricom PLC and report to the Senate. Continue to oversight the implementation of the Universal Service Fund connectivity projects. C, facilitate dialogue on the regulation of digital taxi hailing services and conduct inspection visits in various counties to inspect connectivity, the implementation of the digital literacy program, and the rollout of the national optical fiber backbone infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Petronila Were.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to commend the chair of the ICT committee for such a thorough presentation. And I want to comment, Mr. Speaker, that ICT committee is one of the thorough committees. I have worked with other committees as well, but it's one of the most thorough committees. I'll give an example of the statement on the monopolistic tendencies by Safaricom. We have managed to have meetings with almost all stakeholders in the telecom industry to get to the gist of the matter. And I know that when that report comes to this House will be properly informed. It will be a thoroughly done report, and I want to thank the clerks of ICT committee for a good job. The same with the Office of the County Printer Bill. That bill was also done very well by the legal committee or the legal representative in the committee. I want to commend them because we ended up not having any amendments because that bill also had come earlier, and the legal committee or the legal team was able to include all the issues that had been raised earlier. Mr. Speaker, as we move on, however, I would like the committee to look at the issues of media ethics. As we move to the general election, would love to see the media be fair and just in their presentation of news in radio, TV, and even print media, so that they are not looked as if they are favoring only one presidential candidate or only two presidential candidates, when we know that we have others, for example, like Musalia Mudavadi, who is also vying. So media ethics should be a point of concern now for the committee moving forward, so that they are fair in their reporting towards the general election, to reduce tension and to make sure that all Kenyans have an opportunity to make a choice in terms of who they would like to vote for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Enoch Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise in support of the quarterly report, the chairman of ICT, where I also sit. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by saying that I am a member of 3 committees in the Senate, and I wish to reiterate, without any fear of contradiction, that if there is one committee where members have exerted themselves and given themselves to service, then it is in the Committee of ICT. Mr. Speaker, I have just heard the Senator for Nandi, who is now engaging my chairman and taking away his attention from my presentation. I've heard the Senator of Nandi contributing to a statement from the Senator of Kakamega on Konza City, pushing a very dangerous narrative, saying that he would want to see people arrested on account of an audit query. Mr. Speaker, if people are going to be arrested on account of audit queries, then there will be nobody left in offices to work. The thing to do is to make sure that, because that matter is now properly before a very competent committee of the Senate, that matter shall be prosecuted properly, and the truth shall be brought to light. Mr. Speaker, I want to specifically mention the issue of the statement that was actually brought to the committee by Senator Were, which the committee has really done a very thorough job on, and which is awaiting a final report of the committee. The statement on the alleged monopolistic tendencies of Safaricom. Mr. Speaker, that is one statement that has elicited a lot of positive interaction between the committee and stakeholders in the industry. I really like the submissions that have been made available to the committee by Telkom Kenya, by Airtel, by Safaricom itself, by the Ministry of ICT, by the Communications Authority of Kenya, Competition Authority, and Mr. Speaker, the committee has been able to really get inside information about the performance of Safaricom.
Order members. Senator consulting Lawtons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming to my rescue. You know, Senator Cheruiyot is very excited to see Senator Gideon in the House. He can't sit pretty, on his chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that on this matter of Safaricom, as the chairman has said, that the committee is going to be retreating to do a report on the operations of Safaricom, on alleged abuse of a status and attendant issues around pricing. The Speaker, this committee will do a thorough job on that report, a thorough job. And the interest of that person who buys airtime worth 20 shillings will be at the heart of the decision, the final report of this committee. The Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Moses Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also join in to thank the chair of the ICT committee for presenting his quarterly report. And it's clear that the committee has been active, doing some positive work. Going to the future, Mr. Speaker, I would want to urge the committee to pay some attention to online lending, which, Mr. Speaker, is commonly called Fuliza. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, every time you want to send some money to somebody, they quickly send you a message and say, don't send on this number, send on this one. because the one they tell you not to send has a Fuliza loan. And these Fuliza loans, Mr. Speaker, are not being controlled by the central bank. So they charge interest that cumulatively is very punitive.
What is it, Senator Sakaja? Okay.
Yeah, we are told, Mr. Speaker, that online lending is now choking about 430 billion is it in a year? Yeah, that's very substantial sums of money, Mr. Speaker, and it is helping the ordinary people because they borrow in small bits and pieces of shillings, but the cumulative total of interest paid is unconscionable. It's actually Shylock interest. I also want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that when the chairman walked in, we were dealing with a statement from Laikipia where CAK seems to be not paying sufficient attention to protection of frequencies that are given out to individuals or groups that pay for community radios and other electronic communications. That again is an area, Mr. Speaker, that the committee should ensure that there are no overlapping of frequencies, that there is no jamming of one frequency by another, and that there is no abuse by those who are bigger against the smaller players in the industry. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because we know that competition always brings quality, competition always brings fairness, and when the regulator makes sure that whether it is Airtel or Safaricom or Orange or any other player, they have to compete fairly so that wananchi get value for money in terms of service delivery. So I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that as we go to the elections of 2022, the ICT ministry must make sure that the whole country gets a 3G coverage because, Mr. Speaker, transmission of results is going to be electronically done, and we should not have any situation where somebody in Loyangalani cannot transmit results with ease because there is no proper frequency and there's no proper coverage. We want the whole country to be, Mr. Speaker, covered fairly so that we all enjoy the fruits of modernity. Equally important, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that when we go to elections, we must run away and move completely from the suspicions we have had in the past as to whether the transmission of results are doctored, interfered with, to create incorrect results, and so on. Last and more important, Mr. Speaker, the committee must also work with the cybercrime section of the police in stamping out, churning out of fake news. Mr. Speaker, fake news is almost overriding our society in terms of communication. People just sit in their sitting rooms and coin fake news and spread them as fast as they possibly can, causing fear, uncertainty, and despondence among the population. We should make it a crime for anybody to generate fake news and disseminate to the population because, Mr. Speaker, this can easily ignite a fireball in the country. You can imagine, Mr. Speaker, somebody churning out a fake news that some prominent Kenyan has been gunned down or has been maimed in some mysterious attack. It can have the resultant effect of people taking the law into their own hands and acting in revenge on the basis of news that is incorrect. Equally important, Mr. Speaker, is the control of airwaves by criminals in committee. Mr. Speaker, every other day I'm sure it is true to everybody here. You get a message from a criminal committee congratulating you for winning a raffle you have never participated in and sending you information that you pay in this account to receive this money. This kind of criminal behavior, Mr. Speaker, has to be dealt with, because many people fall prey to this kind of things. Equally important, Mr. Speaker, is the creation of parody accounts on Facebook. All the time you find, Mr. Speaker, and many of us have been victims. Somebody just sets up a parody account on Facebook and says, Senator for Kericho is finalizing the process of lending money to so and so and so and so, and you can borrow by registering with 3,000. And gullible Kenyans will pay in, thinking that by paying into a fake account of the Kericho senator, you will then be given money to buy a motorbike and ride as a boda. Again, Mr. Speaker, we need the police to be on high alert, and the ICT committee should get into this so that these cyber criminals are also dealt with, because they are wreaking havoc on our unsuspecting citizens, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we must continuously try to improve the frequencies and the clarity of communication. Of late, Mr. Speaker, you get the impression that Safaricom is becoming a victim of its own success. Their service provision, Mr. Speaker, is creating a lot of unnecessary problems. You are listening on a phone call from somebody, another call comes in and truncates the call you are listening to. Or you are listening to a phone call from somebody, then it suddenly goes off. And I think the ICT committee must ensure that the success of Safaricom must be matched with continuous improvement of technology, so that we get high quality services for the money that we pay. Because whether it's Mama Mboga, whether it's a boda rider, whether it's whoever, every frequency you use and airtime you spend, you pay for it. And we want to pay for good quality services, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the Committee of ICT, led by Senator Gideon Moi, one of our principals in the One Kenya Alliance, and I thank the other principal, Senator Wetangula, for his comments. Mr. Speaker, just two things that are really critical, and I'm glad Senator Gideon is listening and is here. Of everything he's spoken about, which of course is very important, there are two areas that we need to conclude and sort out as a House. The first one, Senator Moi, is the issue of digital hailing applications. This is a matter that, Mr. Speaker, we've tried to deal with from 2015, before I came to the Senate. Our drivers, our young people in Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, who are driving Ubers, Bolt, and all of those other applications. Mr. Speaker, these companies have been competing in what we call a race to the bottom. And Senator Mutula brought a question to my Committee on Labor, which we said we must deal with jointly, and we started the process. In fact, at some point, NTSA started going around doing public participation on the regulations, but COVID came and they stopped. Mr. Speaker, if you get into an Uber today, I'm not sure you use Ubers, but I'm sure you sometimes request for some to be used. Mr. Speaker, for your workers, your staff, etc. Mr. Speaker, the minute you pay in that cab, immediately 25% goes to Netherlands, to Uber BV. 25% of what you're paying that taxi driver. Many times from here, for instance, from here to Lavington or from here to Kayole, it's like 300 shillings. That Uber driver, and the reason we had a lot of accidents around COVID, they have to drive 18 hours a day to make sense of what they're being paid. So the first thing we said in the regulations, the draft regulations that came, and I wish the chair of delegated legislation was here, the commission that goes to these companies cannot be 25%. It must be maximum 15% of the commission. And then number two, and we engage with the Competition Authority, the Ministry of ICT, the Ministry of Transport. There must be a minimum rate per kilometer and per hour or per minute, because the race to the bottom. So you might enjoy paying a low rate, but this person, in fact, in January, Mr. Speaker, 4,000 Ubers were being auctioned. 4,000. And I hope everyone listens, because whether it is bottom up you're talking about or 6,000, these young people are there. They cannot be able to afford servicing. And of all who went for those Ubers to buy them at the auction, they were taking them back. It's a vicious cycle. If you take an Uber in the US, in DC, or in New York, immediately you get in, there's the charge that goes to the state. The commission is not that 25. Kenya is the, I think, 28th. It's one of the highest in the world. And then on top of that, the per minute per kilometer rate is sensible. So we said, look, let's set a minimum. And the Automobile Association of Kenya has been helping and said, look, we know what is wear and tear. We know what amounts to, fuel.
What is it, Senator Rokoria?
Just point of information, and I'm sure Senator
Sakaja, do you want to be informed?
Would like to be yes, he's willing to be informed by me.
Governance structure in existence in managing schools in the education sector in general. What are the causes of the ongoing unrest in schools across the country? The response is the causes, according to the various task forces and field reports, can be grouped into two. One, school-based factors and other factors. Quickly to the school-based factors, we have congestion in classrooms and dormitories. This could be attributed to the 100% transition policy and the increasing population. Communication breakdown between the students and the administration. Unrest could be a way of communication about underlying irritabilities. Poor communication channels promote violent expression of students' needs. C, drug and substance abuse in schools. This requires a multi-agency approach to address effectively causes of students being under the influence of drugs when engaging in destruction of school property has been reported. D, the school administrative styles. Stringent administrative tendencies could be viewed as oppressive by students today who are mainly used to unlimited freedom in their homes and their parents. This could be a major cause of resentment by students to administration. And then the congested school calendar. That's a long one, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that is clear to the members. Then we have reduced extracurriculum activities. This is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Inter-school activities were suspended. This denied the learners who are gifted in various areas and fields, an opportunity to engage and interact outside the school environment, besides occasionally allowing the whole school ease of pressures beyond the confines of the school. Then we have inadequate guidance and counseling services. Many schools lack professional counselors. On other factors, Mr. Speaker, the negative influence of the media, TV, and social media that tended to glorify violence. The modern student has easy access to information from the mainstream and social media, and this has on certain occasions had a negative influence on their modeling. Then we have poor school-community relationship. Then we have poor parenting. There is an element of poor role modeling in school children due to parental negligence and absconding of this social duty on the assumption that is being handled by the teacher. Then we have insensitivity to a changing society. The school managers and teachers may be insensitive to the emerging trends in behavioral adaptation of the students. There is therefore possibility of conflicting approaches in addressing behavioral correction by teachers. Then we have poor role models. Many students have experienced gaps in role modeling and draw support from media and peers. Children are crying out for someone to guide them. The father figure is absent in certain cases. This Kenyan society is patriarchal in nature. Therefore, if leadership is absent from fathers, confusion is imminent. That might explain why over 70% of the unrests are reported from boys' schools. Then we have the peer pressure. Mr. Speaker, that one I can skip. Then we have inadequate school inspection services. Due to inadequate capacity to offer inspection services, it is likely that precipitating triggers of unrest are not detected on time, thus failing to arrest them before they occur. Then we have the teacher factors. The law seems to protect the child even in criminal behavior, thereby making teachers hesitant to carry out disciplinary measures. This is made worse by parents who are overprotective of their kids. It is not uncommon to hear a parent remark that their child is innocent even when the school has evidence of misconduct. The second question was, what practical measures is the Ministry of Education pursuing in addressing the current spate of unrest in schools? The response, Mr. Speaker, reads, the Ministry of Education, together with other state agencies, education managers, and school administration, is pursuing the following actions to address the current spate of unrest. One, in the short term, action has been initiated against aspects in the school unrest and include 302 arrests have been made between January and November, with 126 cases recorded in November 2021 as at 11th November 2021. 41 suspects have been arraigned in court as at 11th November 2021. Board of Management meetings have been directed to convene urgent meetings and put in place modalities of ensuring enhanced school safety. The county security and intelligence committees have been directed to convene meetings with the education stakeholders in the various counties to discuss matters school unrest, and a circular has been issued by the Ministry of Education to field officers to liaise with school administration and the national government, GAO, to improve the management of safety and security of schools. There has been closure of affected schools to pave way for investigations and cost assessment of ensuring damages to the schools in accordance with the Regulation 35 and 36 of the Basic Education Regulations 2015. Conditional readmission of students in the affected schools in a bid to pick out those who are involved in the arrest for necessary disciplinary actions. Then we have controlled transfer of students to stem out movement of undisciplined students from one school to another. Schools have been instructed to double the number of teachers on duty, especially at night in boarding schools. And finally, strengthening of guidance and counseling. In the medium to long term, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education, working in concert with other stakeholders, will pursue the following actions to help abet further occurrence of unrest. Holding stakeholder fora led by regional and county level coordinators of education to address schools unrest. Enhanced monitoring of the current situation to avert any further escalation of arson incidences. Resumption of school co-curricular calendar, ensuring that there is flexibility in school programs and that tenable demands of the learners are addressed by the school administration. Fast tracking of the court cases and secure convictions of all cases involving incitement and destruction of school property. Enhanced CCTV coverage in schools by exploring ways of making the IT solution affordable to schools. Engage the relevant state agencies to provide for recruitment of additional teachers to address the existing shortage. The government to address the level of congestion in tuition and boarding facilities progressively. The ministry recommends structured courses for institutional heads to be trained on managerial and leadership skills on a regular basis. Enhance sensitization on drugs and substance abuse policy in schools, while at the same time working with players in the security sector to curtail availability of drugs. Recruitment of professional counselors to schools. Schools to establish welfare committees comprising of teachers, non-teaching staff, and students that will address both internal and external potential causes of unrest and improve school-community relations. Both institutions and prisons only hold convicted students, thus need to address the issue of criminal indiscipline. The education correctional institutions envisaged by the BEA 2013 need to be established where student suspects can continue learning as they await verdict. They also do not cover secondary education. The country needs to fully examine critically the place of boarding schools going into the future. Finally, has the ministry involved all relevant stakeholders in addressing and mitigating past and present occurrences of unrest in schools? Mr. Speaker, the response reads, to address the issue of schools unrest, the government has in the past appointed task forces They include 1, Claire Omolo Task Force, 2, Devi Koech Task Force, 3, Naomi Wangai Task Force. In the course of undertaking the functions assigned to them, the task forces engaged with all stakeholders. The ministry compiled the recommendations of these task forces for action and implementation in 2013. The ministry has therefore engaged with the relevant stakeholders and the recommendations touching on policies, legal, research and monitoring, financing, teachers, schools. And the implementation of the recommendations is at various stages. With me, Mr. Speaker, is a very clear matrix showing the level of the recommendations. And as a committee, we would really urge the Ministry of Education to ensure most of these recommendations are acted upon quickly so that we can have sanity in the sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Sosian.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to thank the Chair and the Ministry for availing this report within 7 days. And I would say, Honorable Speaker, the responses are indeed extensive and satisfactory, but there are a number of glaring issues that really need this House to move further. I would recommend, Honorable Speaker, that on the basis of this report, this House should take further action, because the matter of school unrest and the banning is very repetitive. It's indeed very repetitive right from 2008. And the question you are asking, why are they banning dormitories only? It's only dormitories. Even if we hear an incident in the next coming days, we had 2 cases over the weekend, Jamhuri High School and Kerugoya Girls, it is the banning of dormitories. Why is it only dormitories? And this has not been touched on the report. Honorable Speaker, I would also have wished that this report touched on other emerging issues, because it is reference on the activities of the previous task forces. The other issues to do with policies that are conceived without proper consultations, like when you look at the localization of principals, this has affected quite a number of schools. It's an issue that needs to be examined further. And of course, I welcome the clear analysis that the day schools have done well. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the report and if you look at it across the country, we've not had any incident at all reported at the day schools. And looking at the cumulative additional value of the implementation of the reports, 70% of our high school students are in day schools. And the question of looking at the future of boarding schools really becomes extremely collective. Admission of the effect of 100% transition is an indictment on the ministry. Is accepting admission, excessive admission, and there could be congestions in the dormitory and poor boarding services, and that is what is leading to this direct action from students. Could this not have been avoided by engaging in proper preparation of boarding services in our schools? It could be about the quality of boarding services. And those of us who have done psychology, the child psychology, if you see students banning dormitories, then it means there is something wrong in the dormitories. And Honorable Speaker, looking at the matrix, I'm attracted to the very extensive matrix of the Ministry of Education, and particularly a recommendation that the boarding services should be outsourced, so that the boarding services are of high quality and high standards, and it should be delinked from other aspects of school management. And from the matrix, it is indicating that it has not been acted upon. If indeed it was a recommendation, why was it not acted upon? Honorable Speaker, the recommendations are good, the direction is good, but I think, Honorable Speaker, I would recommend that the Committee of the House can take advantage of the report and do further audit of the schools that are affected with respect to the matrix, so that we can help the ministry.
Now you are debating this report. It's not. There's no need for debate. You just needed to highlight this or the other and the other, and then so you are going to take the whole afternoon. I mean,
Honorable Speaker, considering the gravity of the matter,
it doesn't matter. No, not when I'm on the chair.
Yes,
that's in breach of the rules. It's just the rules don't have that thing we are calling gravity. It's just to make comments. If there's anything which is not clear,
I think, Honorable Speaker, I've made very extensive comments on the Senate.
Try to find out from the chair.
Finally, I stand guided, Honorable Speaker. Then finally, I recommend that the committee can further take action on this with respect of certain action that have not been acted upon on the matrix. If this is done, we should be able to stop this cycle of waves of strikes in our schools. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honourable members, I would not wish to encourage debates on statements that have been read. Just a comment here and there. Honourable Pukose.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, listening to the chair, that is a more comprehensive report, but when you look at some of the recommendations, I think it would have been good to question, because when you talk of issues like outsourcing of catering services, and you find that many of these students, even paying fees is a problem, because even with the bursary that we are giving, many of them are feeling challenges. Parents are not able to pay for that. So when a ministry makes a recommendation like delinking the education from the services of catering, then are they really being realistic? Because not all parents can be able to afford a situation where you have outsourcing of such a kind of services like catering. The second issue, which I wanted to seek clarification or make a comment, is when we have students burning the dormitories, where I was listening keenly, and I wanted to find out, where are they getting the fire from? Are they using the petrol? And how does this fire enter into the school? Is there any, because you talked of external factors and also internal factors. Among the external, are there people who have been arrested for taking fire to the schools? Because that bit of it is what I would also want to find clarification. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
But of course, I imagine that what you are raising can only be responded to with the specifics. In this incident, in this school, traces of petrol or something, some other such like substances were found, but it cannot be generic, because it may be that in others, maybe those students and other people who engage in smoking could even have provided the fire. Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to comment that that's a comprehensive report. But now, how to move forward, Honorable Speaker? My suggestion is for the House to seize this report and work on it. It should come back to us, Honorable Speaker, as a full report of the Committee of Education. And then, thereafter, it should now be handed over to the Committee on Implementation, so that we can now really follow up with the very good recommendations to understand, has the ministry implemented the solution, the problems and the solutions as laid down in the statement. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I'm seeking that the committee takes it up, writes a full report, so that we can really have it into the House as a whole. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Undo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I must commend the Chair of the Education Committee, who happens to be the women rep for my county, for bringing a comprehensive report in this House in a very touchy issue of school fires in this country. Honorable Speaker, I must on record my constituency, Funyula, has had 2 devastating fires. As Galame High School, 5 dormitories have been torched in a spate of 3 months, and 2 dormitories have been torched at Nambovoto Secondary School. While the report is fairly general, gives far-reaching recommendation, I totally agree with the majority whip that the committee needs to go beyond the statement, says the matter at its own volition and own accord, investigate, or in a form of a petition, review these cases thoroughly. Honorable Speaker, the most disappointing case that many times this fire happened, the security organs do not move with speed to analyze in details what caused the fire, what was the, what actually was the main cause of the fire, what was the fuel that fueled the fire. Because many times if we are able to find out what was the agent, we can then connect the dots up to the point where it's supposed to have been. Honorable Speaker, honestly speaking, it is a matter that as a country we must address. We are literally bringing up, sorry to use the word, we are bringing up criminals. And these criminals are coming from our homes. Our homes have become a breeding ground for criminals. Honorable Speaker, if as a country do not seize this matter and nick it in the bud and solve now, we are creating a dangerous society that's going to be destroyed in the years to come. I totally agree that it's a point we need to look at it. There are very many issues. There are very, very many issues which unfortunately have not been covered in the report. Some have been glossed over. They need a thorough review. I sincerely support and request the committee to seize up the matter and deal with it. Look at what is the relationship between the principal and the teachers. What's the relationship in respect of the issues of contracts and tenders in the school? That's also fueling animosity to an point that now the children are just being used as scapegoat. They're being used as a pawn in a fairly elaborate wars. They're not part of it. Honorable Speaker, it's a matter that has hurt me so much. I can speak about it the whole day. But I hope now as our process has begun, it's a matter that we can bring to the table for national discourse and debate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
But remember that it was a request for a statement. So it's up to the committee, really. Honorable Flores Mutua, it's up to you, really, to, as a committee, to think whether, given that response, comprehensive report as it is, whether there are issues that you think, as a committee, you can take up and even make a report that you could now table before the House. Because we cannot debate that which is just a response from a ministry. Honorable Flores Mutua, you think there is...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the members for their comments. As a committee, we are ready to take it up, as Honorable Wange has said, so that we can come up with a comprehensive report on this very urgent issue. Also, we will have to look at the issues that has been raised by Honorable Sosion on why it's only dormitories that are being banned and who brings this fuel. So these are things we need to sit down as a committee and agree on how we are going to get these facts and table a report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Pukose, about the suspects. I only got the numbers of the people arrested. I'm not so sure who these people are. So as a committee, we will dig deeper and know who is in these 3 or 2 suspects. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, of course, the Honorable Oundo did raise the issue that the security agencies are not always available to when these fires happen. And what crossed my mind is the efficiency that has been demonstrated by the security agencies today by nabbing 3 escaped convicts. The Honorable Dwelle suggests that you have to confirm the identities of those who have been arrested and those ones who escaped, so that you don't have you don't arrest the wrong people. The Honorable because I see things that some persons in Kitui may have been arrested. we only hope that they did not arrest the poor peasants. Maybe they are doubles. Can we get no, on this one? It's over. It's over. It's it's not debate. This house operates in. Yeah, it's getting to 4:30. We still haven't gone to business. It's important. Remember, this house represents the people. Yeah, and legislates on behalf of the republic. The others participate. So it is you have an onerous task of legislating, and not to just participate. Leader Majority statement.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 44, section 2, paragraph A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, the 16th of November 2021, to prioritize business for consideration. Honourable Speaker, just to reiterate, as members are aware, we are in the third part of the fifth session of the 12th Parliament, and in this regard, the remaining time is constrained in comparison to the pending business, and consequently, we did
Leader Majority, I'm just wondering whether the Chair of Committee on Administration is right to walk where the next business, obviously, is business that touches his committee.
Okay.
Surely, that business of citizens' registration.
We will.
Maybe he has not looked at the outer paper.
He has delegated. He said he had delegated. Yeah.
To the Honorable Aduma.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Consequently, we resolved during the last meeting that we consider revising the calendar, and I want to thank members for having accepted our recommendation and passed the motion which you did earlier. Honourable Speaker, I also do wish to reiterate that the House needs the assistance of the committee's chairpersons and members in expediting the pending business. In this regard, I urge all committees to finalize on their reports, which are critical to enrich debate at second reading, and it's almost becoming the norm that the House proceeds to debate a bill without the benefits of the committee input, which is certainly not in the spirit of our standing orders and the procedures of this House. Honourable Speaker, as we speak, there is quite a number of bills that are scheduled, but we are yet to receive the reports from the relevant committees. Honourable Speaker, on Tuesday, the 23rd of November 2021, the House is scheduled to consider at the Committee of the Whole House the Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnerships Bill, which is National Assembly Bill number 6 of 2021, and the House will also continue the consideration of the following bills at the second reading, which is the Asian Widows and Orphans Pensions Repeal Bill of 2021, the County Governments Grants Bill, Senate Bill number 35 of 2021, the Provident Fund Repeal Bill of 2021, the Coffee Bill, which is Senate Bill number 22 of 2020, and the Mediation Bill of 2020. Honourable Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 42A, 5 and 6, I wish to convey the following Cabinet Secretaries are scheduled to appear before department committees as follows. A, the Cabinet Secretary for Lands is scheduled to appear before the Department Committee on Lands on 24th of November 2021 to respond to question number 343 of 2021 by Honourable Simba Arati regarding the ownership details of parcels of land occupied by Kilimani, Milimani, and Kileleshwa primary schools in the Nairobi City County. Question number 350 of 2021 by the Honourable Moses Kirima on the demarcation of boundaries between Tharaka Nithi and Meru counties along Central Imenti and Tharaka constituencies, as recommended by the Interim Independent Boundaries Review Commission in November of 2010. Question number 353 of 2021 by the Honourable Babu Awino, MP, regarding the ownership or status of parcels of land number 334 and 4422, which had been set aside for public use in Embakasi East constituency. Question number 420 of 2021 by the Honorable Godfrey Osotsi regarding the ownership status of parcels of land within Mautama Central Settlement Scheme in Lugari constituency. Question number 433, 2021 by the Honorable Ali Wario regarding the details of Nairobi Ranching Company Limited in Chara, Kipini, and Witu areas of Tana River County, including land owned by the company and the date of acquisition. Question number 411, 2021 by Honorable Rahab Mukami regarding the progress on the realization of the Big Four agenda with respect to affordable housing. Question number 461, 2021 by the Honorable Florence Bore, MP, regarding the ownership status and the total acreage of land occupied by Bomas of Kenya Limited in Langata constituency, Nairobi County, and compensation status for compulsory acquisition. Question number 461 of 2021 by the Honorable Badi Twalib, MP, regarding the circumstances surrounding sudden blockage of Mugada Road, CR 666811 in Jomvu constituency. Honorable Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry is scheduled to appear before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on November 25th, 2021 to respond to question number 416 of 2021 by the Honorable Dr. Robert Pukose regarding stoppage of the Shamba system in various forest establishments in the country. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will convene on Tuesday, 23rd of November to schedule business for the rest of the week. I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
What's your point of order, Honorable Duale?
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Leader of Majority for that comprehensive statement. But Mr. Speaker, there's a bill, and you need to help us. There's a bill by the member for Nambale, Sakwa Bunyasi, on managing the public debt and establishing an autonomous public debt management authority, which will be independent of the National Treasury. Speaker, I really want to indulge you that that bill, which is the private members' bill, is among the few private members' bills that you said are very, very important. And Mr. Speaker, I have been tracking the tracker of the National Assembly the last 2 years, and I don't know why. Somebody, I think, doesn't want to bring that bill. I kept on asking Honorable Sakwa. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want you to guide us on when that bill will come, so that next week we start the second reading. It's a bill that will help this country manage its debt. It's a bill that will establish an autonomous authority. And Mr. Speaker, it happens in all other, you have been around, you have been a chairman of the Public Investment Committee. This is something that happens in other jurisdictions. You know, the problem we are facing as a country, we need an independent, autonomous authority to manage the public debt as a country. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to ask you, maybe in the next House Business Committee, that that bill is fast-tracked. It's important not only to the member, but it's important to this House as we go on our last few days, few months before the end of the 12th Parliament, so that, Mr. Speaker, we can go into history as a House that dealt with many issues under your leadership. But this bill is very critical, Mr. Speaker.
The majority.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, the bill is very important. It's a very well drafted bill, but it has two processes that are still pending. And the first one, we have yet to get concurrence from the Senate that it does not concern counties. And the second one, it's then the committee report is also pending. Yeah, no, it's 2020. Yeah, it was just done in 2020, but it has those two processes waiting. And once we unlock the Senate on concurrence, then we also in consultation. And that's what I was appealing to the committee chairs to actually go through some of those things. Let us have the reports, especially on a critical bill like that, so that we are not told there was no public participation. And hence, that's the only reason it's not on the order paper.
Have we done the communication to the Senate?
I think it's being followed. Yeah, I think it's on my tracker of this today. It's just showing that that concurrence is yet to be received. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority cannot have his cake and eat it. And Honorable Wanyonyi will agree with me. Yesterday is the same leader of majority who was insisting that we start debating a bill from the Senate on county grants without the report of the committee being tabled. Now we are being told a bill that has been around for the last 18 months. And Honorable Bunyasi will agree with me that, number one, I have never seen the concurrence. The concurrence of the Senate is administrative, is a function at the Speaker's office. And it doesn't go to all bills. This is a bill within the reading of Article 109, Mr. Speaker, can originate here. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, a committee cannot keep a bill for more than a year, Mr. Speaker, if you look at it. So, Mr. Speaker, we can't have some bills being debated, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, under the guidance of the Deputy Speaker yesterday, later he realized the magnitude of the one on county government conditional grants, and he only allowed the chairman to move and to be seconded, and then said until the report is tabled. So, Mr. Speaker, unless something is going on, somebody somewhere, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, you need to give us direction, you as our Speaker, that why this bill in the corridors of Parliament is a private members. My bill, which was done this year, Mr. Speaker, is in, if you look at the Wednesday chronology, my own bill, I think somewhere in May this year, is in order number 1516. So why is the bills that are in the order? This bill has been published, it has read for a second time, Mr. Speaker, and even at the last page, it has at the memorandum of objects, it says whether this bill concerns counties. So what are we talking about concurrence of the Senate? So, Mr. Speaker, let us not split hairs here. Let us not split hairs. This bill, and I'm sure if you give an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, please help us. Let us debate this bill. Let us form that independent debt management authority. Let us help this country manage debt. That's why we are here, Mr. Speaker.
But you know, if you look at the clear provisions of Article 110(3), it's before a bill is considered before any house, the two speakers shall resolve any question as to whether it's a bill concerning counties or not concerning counties. It may well be that in the memorandum of objects and reasons stated that it does not concern counties, but unfortunately you are all aware of the High Court decision, you know, on these matters. So what we do is literally every bill, including these very obvious ones, the finance bill, the appropriations bill, which you know does not concern counties, because counties have their own appropriation bills. You know, there are 47. So a national government appropriations bill can never concern counties. But you see, Article 165 provides that the final interpretation of the Constitution is vested in the judiciary. So the judiciary somehow thinks that even those ones which are clearly where they have no where the appropriation, an appropriation bill, an act is purely to allow government to withdraw funds, and that there's no way it can concern counties, because counties have their own appropriations bills and acts. Yeah, now, but the judiciary are saying that no, even that one you need to go and do. And the wording of Article 110(3) is resolve any issue, any question. So, in fact, some of the judicial officers, to whom I have a lot of respect, with whom I have a lot of respect, have clearly ruled that a question must arise. Because that's what Article 110.3 presupposes. The question must arise. So, if no question has arisen, then there's nothing for the two speakers to resolve. So, but now, some other, of course, sometimes, because they don't go to the same schools. So there's another group which was brought from outlying stations, and they came and they didn't read this. So they made that determination. We respect, but we respectively disagree. But nevertheless, we obey. They have said that they need to resolve. In fact, the leader majority talked about concurrence. The Constitution does not talk about concurrence. It is the resolution of any question as to whether it concerns counties. Now, maybe Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi could tell us, because I am aware that I've actually read your bill. Maybe you could tell us. I cannot remember where exactly it is.
Let me get my mask on, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity, and I want to thank the MP for Garissa Town for getting sufficiently concerned to raise this matter. I appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, I've been following up this fairly frequently. The last one was yesterday or the day before, and the Finance Committee had not yet finalized the report, I understand, because they are waiting for comments from the central bank. That's the reason that was given, which surprised me a bit, because the last time that we had this public participation meeting with the various agencies, in which the central bank did not show up, but we had Treasury, we had ISPAC, and we had others, is about 3, or probably, I have to get exactly, at least 3 months ago. So this delay in finalizing a report internally, they are waiting for central bank comments. Central bank is an interested party in the sense that we would reduce the fiscal revenue to the central bank because of the provisions of this bill. So they probably will not be excited to comment on it quickly. But it does not conflict with their core mandate as a central bank. These are fiscal responsibilities that go to the executive in the finance side. And I think it would be really helpful for that to come before the House. There are many public interest questions that are in there. And so I would urge, Mr. Speaker, as you think through this and as you give us your feedback on it, that maybe there needs to be some service charter in the committees also to have a turnaround for this report. Otherwise, the role of private members is completely diminished. We just here to pass bills by government, and also private members, which do come after some time, are really, really frustrated. And we do not have an open, transparent system for saying it's too late. It's taking too much time. I really would urge the leadership of the House, including the majority leader who is here, and the whip is here, and others, that we look into this. And this particular is of tremendous interest to the country. And, contrary to what people fear and think, that probably the bill will gag the administration from incurring. No, it doesn't. It helps rationalize that process. It helps make the process more transparent. It helps to provide rigorous analysis behind it. It helps provide bookkeeping, better bookkeeping that's being done, more open record management. It will be a lot easier for us to deal with these agencies we work with and so on. It's really a positive, growth-enhancing bill. So I really would urge, Mr. Speaker, that we get it to come.
Honorable Sakwa, could you, just for my information, has it been read the first time?
The second reading we are waiting to come.
So then the resolution between the two speakers has happened. Yeah, I think. No? If the issues about Article 110.3 have been sorted out, then it's just a committee to do public participation and bring their report to the House. Perhaps no. Can we get an update on Tuesday from the committee, from the chair of the Finance Committee? And let the chair now begin to be a bit more. I don't know what happened. She suddenly has disappeared from the House.
Complain, Governor.
Now I did make this plea on Monday that please, even as you do those other things, let's not the business of the House must not suffer. So there's a vice chair, but let's get an update on Tuesday. So the clerk to follow up with the chair of the committee. I think there may be no issue about 110.3 from what I am getting. Yes. So we will get a report on it. And I would urge that the Honorable Sako Bunyasi please be also present so that whatever update we'll be getting from the committee, you're able then to relate to what you have just reported in the House. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Report on a public petition by residents of Wajir and Garissa counties regarding lack of access to citizen registration services. Resumption of debate.
The information I have is that this report has been moved. The mover moved and the seconder was in the process, but as a balance of 3 minutes. And the person who was seconding was the Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, who is not present but did write to me requesting that the Honorable Aduma, yes, do proceed to take his 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take the 3 minutes to second the report. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that this report was brought by my long-time friend, who must be very privileged because he's one of the few members who has known Aduma for over 16 years, Honorable Duale. Mr. Speaker, what the Honorable member brought actually concerns the issue of registration of persons. And according to the report, this is an issue in which the members were concerned, and we looked at the report and made very practical recommendations on how to assist on the petition. Mr. Speaker, we urge the members to actually support the committee, join the committee and support the members. The implementation should be fast-tracked so that the people do not suffer from lack of amenities. We realize that without proper registration, the people do not enjoy some of the basic amenities which they ought to enjoy. They cannot get proper treatment in hospitals, they cannot get proper bank services, and they cannot also enjoy education facilities in the schools. Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, I'm also informed that even for the men who have attained the age of majority cannot enjoy the basic conjugal rights because they are being discriminated. They cannot marry. So I would... So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge that we join and support this motion so that the people could enjoy these very, very basic needs. I have known the mover of this petition for a very long time, when he was indeed, actually, when I was the executive in Garissa Township, had known Duale that long, and the privilege of meeting me made him really enter this house and became a ranking member ahead of me, because for him to get access to Baba, he had to rely on me many times for that access. So I support and I second this motion so that this should be fast-tracked for the benefit of our people in Wajir and Garissa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I second the report.
I propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on its consideration of a public petition by residents of Wajir and Garissa counties regarding lack of access to citizens' registration services, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. Honorable Duale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on its consideration of my public petition by the residents of Wajir and Garissa counties regarding lack of access to citizen registration services on the basis of their fingerprints being captured within the framework and database of UNHCR. Mr. Speaker, when I brought this petition, it was following what a representative of the great people of Garissa Township had witnessed. And Mr. Speaker, for 60 years now, since independence, can you imagine the citizens of this country in Garissa town constituency, in Lagdera, in Ijara, in Fafi, Dadaab, and Wajir South constituencies have not been in a position to access government services, including health, education, and economic rights, such as accessing banking services and formal employment. Mr. Speaker, without an ID, what can you do in this country? And my answer is nothing. Mr. Speaker, Article 12 of the Constitution of Kenya provides that every citizen is entitled to the rights and privileges and benefits of citizens that include a Kenyan passport and any other documents of registration or identification issued by the state to its citizens. The Kenya Citizenship, Mr. Speaker, and Immigration Act of 2011 also provides for registration and issuance of identification documents to Kenyan citizens. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, my people have a constitutional right to be registered and to be issued with identification documents just like any other Kenyans. And we have no apologies. And we are going nowhere. Mr. Speaker, these Kenyans, by virtue of their livelihood in the 90s, following a severe drought, just like what we are experiencing now, went to the refugee camps in order to get basic livelihood services. In the camps, there was food. In the camps, there was better education. There was better health facilities. The Speaker, within their neighborhood, within the borders of Kenya, and that is not a crime, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I don't know what is going on in this country. There is a systematic plan and strategy to profile a certain community called the Somali community in all the successive governments, Mr. Speaker. And we are telling those people that we are here to stay. We will not go back. Even if our fingerprints are captured, the UNHCR has invested resources and time and technology to prove to the government of Kenya that these are Kenyans and people of Kenyan origin. It's, however, Mr. Speaker, very sad that my people lack registration and identification document, which is as a result of them being registered in the refugee database, mainly at Dadaab, Kakuma refugee camps, in order for them to access such services like medical and educational opportunities, but now have been left as stateless, life without dignity in their own country. Speaker, you can imagine children above the age of 18 years who cannot go to a university, who cannot gain formal employment, who cannot even visit at night health facilities. Ladies who are married cannot take their child to hospital. Mr. Speaker, this is an indictment. This is not what the 2010 Constitution and more so the Bill of Rights anticipated. This is the same government, Mr. Speaker, that is registering the Makondes and making them the 45 tribes of Kenya, giving them registration documents. But when it comes to Kenyans who are born, their fathers and their mothers known. And Mr. Speaker, in the 2017 general election, this was a campaign promised by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I want to thank him, because the president asked a task force to be established. It was done. They went to the ground with all the arms of security, the intelligence, the police, with the help of the chiefs and the elders. They verified close to 17,000 of these Kenyans to be given their rightful citizen documents. But Mr. Speaker, some people somewhere between the office of the president and NSSF, where the National Registration Bureau is established, think that the people in these 5 constituencies do not deserve those documents. And we are telling them, shame on you. You must. It's a constitutional right. We are not begging. But now, Mr. Speaker, we are told the documents are ready. They need to be given, because of the campaign period again, they need to be given either by leaders of certain regional parties, or the Minister for Interior, or the President. We don't care who gives. Please hurry. You can take the whole government and do a ceremony, but we want our children to get those documents. Please give our children those documents. They need it like yesterday. Please, and we thank this committee, we thank this House, and we want to thank the National Registration Bureau and the task force, and this House must act, and must act now. I support, and also
let's have Honorable Dahil.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And as a person who is representing the Dadaab constituency and a resident of Garissa town, I want to thank the person who brought this petition, Honorable Adam Duale, Parliament, and on behalf of the residents of Garissa and Wajir County. Mr. Speaker, it is very important for the members of this House and Kenyans to understand what the issue is about. And it is actually very important for us to mention that we cannot talk about this issue without talking about how the Kenyans have ended up in the refugee database. Basically, what it means is that Kenyans have actually registered as refugees because when the refugees came first, the services available at the refugee camp were good. There was food, there was shelter, there was water, there was education, there was health, and so many things. And in 2006, the government harmonized the refugee database with the National Registration Bureau database. And consequently, everybody who was in the refugee database who wanted to get ID card could not access these cards. What this means is that for the last 30 years, the hosting communities of the refugees have shared with the refugees whatever resource came to the refugees, and the refugees have shared with us our local resources. We have intermarried with the refugees.
we have lived together very harmoniously. And because of that, those Kenyans who ended up in the refugee database could not access the ID cards because the refugee database was harmonized with the national database. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that we cannot even think of closing the refugee camps in the DAP because over 70,000 Kenyans are in the refugee database who are actually part of the refugee population. And even as the government thinks about closing the refugee camp, the issue of removing Kenyans from the refugee database has to be addressed before we actually think of closing the camp. In fact, I say the closure of these camps is with the government of Kenya, because for 30 years, those people have lived with us. We have shared their resources. We have entered into the database. They have shared with our local resources, and consequently, we have become an integration has happened at the level of the county where the refugees are. Honorable Speaker, currently we are aware that about 20,000 people were vetted for removal from the refugee database. But let me say this. I believe myself there are still over 50,000 Kenyans who are still in the refugee database. And even if those people who are vetted are given ID cards and removed from the database, we still have many Kenyans who are in the refugee database who need to be looked at. Honorable Speaker, also, I want to say that for the Kenyan government, let us consider, like the case of Tanzania, how to close this camp without, always bringing deadlines. Because if you lived in the refugee camp for 30 years and you were born there, today you are 30 years old. If you came when you are 10 years old, you are 40 years old. If you came when you are 30 years old, you are 60 years old. Basically, those people have nowhere else to call home. And like the case of Tanzania, we have a president. I think the government of Kenya should even consider giving those refugees citizenship because of their long stay. Refugees have been taken to the US, to Europe, to many other parts. But Kenya has never accepted a refugee to be accepted as a citizen of this country. You know very well the congresswoman in the US, Ilham, came through Hagadera refugee camp. The minister for one-time immigration and citizenship in Canada came through refugee. And these are people who have come through these camps. And I'm saying that the refugees also, if they are given opportunity, they can contribute to the economy, they can contribute to the welfare of this country, and also enhance security. With those many remarks, I want to say I support this report, and we hope that all those Kenyans in the refugee database will be removed so that they can get back their citizenship and they can actually integrate and get their rights as citizens of this country. With those many remarks, I support. Thank you very much.
Honorable Oudo, member for Funyura.
Honorable Speaker, the issue of registration documents, specifically ID and passports, for communities living along the border has been a troublesome issue in this country for many, many years. For many years, the central government, or the national government, so to speak, has deliberately profiled these persons and these communities, believing that they are not truly and fully hearted Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, because of this reason, as my colleagues have said, these people have had nothing else to do to associate themselves with Kenya. That's why, Honorable Speaker, when you travel to northeastern region, they always tell you about your Kenya. They'll profile you as Nywele Ngumu, because our activities and our actions since independence have demonstrated that they're not part and parcel of Kenya. We want to thank the committee for having listened. We want to thank the committee for having taken this petition to logical conclusion, and also want to thank the national government for having heard the pleas of these persons who left their homes in search of basic subsistence, basic survival, because the records available indicate that life in refugee camps have always been far much better than lives of the surrounding community. So it made sense, naturally, to go to those refugee camps so that they can get a livelihood that befits their status as Kenyans. Probably it's an indictment of the successive governments that you cannot treat your own citizen as second-hand citizen and treat others as better citizen. Honorable Speaker, as I stand here, and based on the report of this committee, I'm encouraged. I might also have to move an amendment, a petition, especially for those of us who live along the border between Kenya and Uganda, especially from Busia district, Busia County. Naturally, Honorable Speaker, we are one community. We have got homes straddling between the two artificial boundaries that were created by the colonialists. They did not care that we have a shared heritage, we have shared names. Many of the names we have here are also found across. Many times it takes a lot of persuasion and a lot of noise for the registration clerks to even give ID numbers or IDs to people along the boundary. And most shockingly, Honorable Speaker, naturally, we, the men of Kenya, tend to marry women from Uganda. And because our marriage are always by mutual consent, there isn't much formalities that by mutual consent, because you smile, the lady smile, then the following day you talk, you come and live together. 10 years, 15 years down the line, or 30 years down the line, the lady has given you 20 children. All the children have got IDs, but the lady has been denied an ID because she did not come through the normal process. She didn't have a passport because in Uganda they don't have passports, didn't have an ID, which she surrendered the immigration. In any case, there are so many panyarus, we don't even call them panyarus. They just come and go, so that it become a point, Honorable Speaker. As we talk now, many as members of parliament, we suffer every single day. The government has got Linda Mama program to assist the ladies or the mothers during childbirth, where they are paid through NHIF. But because they do not have IDs, Honorable Speaker, they cannot be enrolled in the program. So it means that the mother has to suffer, has to look for extra expenses to cover maternity cost. And many cases, Honorable Speaker, in terms where it will end up with cesarean, we find that many mothers are losing their lives. And if you profile, if you do a proper statistics, you find that these mothers do not have IDs because they're originally from Uganda. They have been with us for 20 or 30 years. We must have to relook at it. How do we naturalize our people? By virtue of sharing the bed with a Kenyan man, that woman is more of a Kenyan than even the man. Because where we come from, we say relationships are strengthened through two things: through the stomach and through the process that results in pregnancy. That should be strong enough to make a relationship, to make this a Kenyan. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Let's have Honorable Sophia Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this very, very important report. First, I want to support the report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on its consideration of the public petition by the residents of Wajir and Garissa counties. Mr. Speaker, Article 12 of the Constitution provides that every citizen in this country to the right and privilege and benefits of citizenship, including getting certificates and documents of registration like birth certificate, identity card and passports, Mr. Speaker, and other registration certificates like driving license, Mr. Speaker. Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act 2011 also provides for registration and issuance of identification documents to all Kenyan citizens, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my people, and particularly the youth from my constituency and other constituencies in the region, have suffered a great deal, Mr. Speaker. And they have no registration, Mr. Speaker. As you know, Mr. Speaker, and fellow colleagues who contributed to this report have said earlier on that most of the people from the region during the very, very bad drought of 1990 and 91, when His Excellency then declared a state of emergency, and communities lost their livelihoods and lives, and the refugee camps were newly established, all our people migrated and moved in the refugee camp just to look for basic needs and basic like water, food, shelter, Mr. Speaker. Along the line, Mr. Speaker, the data was captured in the refugee database, Mr. Speaker. That gave a problem to over 70,000 Kenyans who were recruited and captured in the refugee database. We have struggled as a community to advocate for their rights for many years, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate particularly His Excellency the President, who formed a task force and who again directed the Ministry of Interior to immediately work on the rights, on the citizenship of those Kenyans who are captured in the refugee database. The United Nations and the Kenyan government sat together, and some of us as members of parliament in this house were called for those meetings. We attended those meetings, and the result was we have today, as I'm standing here, 20,000 Kenyans who have been removed from, who are vetted and removed from the database of the refugee database, Mr. Speaker. Their documents are in the registration bureau here in Nairobi. So what we are asking, this house which is the House of Records and that we quickly stand up and help those communities so that those identity cards which are ready, the 20,000 which are ready, should be given to the owners so that they will be able to get the services that is the rightful as a Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is very shameful for our country. Just because you are a citizen, a Kenyan citizen, was not able to get the basic needs and the basic rights like any other person, and the person goes to refugee camps just to get those services, be it food, shelter, education, health services, and today they are not able to get, they are like stateless. And when you are stateless, Mr. Speaker, you lose your self-confidence, you lose your self-esteem, you are not able to become a person of standards, Mr. Speaker. You are not able to have free movement.
Honorable Sophia, there is nothing wrong. It is that it was just that your time is up. Honorable Muri Fabian.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice on this recommendation of a very important petition. Honorable Speaker, if the due diligence has been done about the people living in that refugee camp, their right is to get their right documents. Under the challenge which we have in this country within the administration system of this country, our people who are in border, they are frustrated. The people who even are within the country, the center of the country, they are very frustrated to get their documents. Some documents like birth certificate, ID, and passport. To get them in this country, there are many cartels who are involved there to do business. Honorable Speaker, I take like my constituency in Kangundo. To get a birth certificate, you have to travel 150 kilometers to go to Machakos headquarters to get a birth certificate. Let's take, for example, the whole jurisdiction of the country. We have endman, we have sub-chief, we have chief. They have the intelligence of the people who are born there, the people who are migrated there, and these people, they can be given the right through administrative services to give the birth certificates. In my constituency, we have gone ahead building assistant chief offices, but these offices, they are not being used by administrative government. The office of the chief in this country has only been used to settle the mediation of the cases of lands, instead of doing the administrative services. So, Honorable Speaker, if the Minister of Interior need to have our citizens and need to make this country grow economically, because the government cannot track their people without the identification. The government cannot enhance people to do business if the people they don't have documents. If you see some of our kids when they are standard 8 going to Form 1, they need birth certificate. Our parents with the little resources, they are being forced to move every corner seeking for this document, which can be just be found near assistant chief office or chief office. So, Honorable Speaker, I don't see, if the due diligence has been done, I don't see why we call our Kenyan refugees. The circumstances which has been happening in this country, people fail to have their basic foods, their basic rights of even clothing we don't have. So if they see anything come important like in refugee camp, you get people going there. So if we know our people, they have in challenge getting their basic rights, that area must be having assistant chief and a chief who have the intelligence of where those people come from. So we don't have any excuse that we don't know the people where they are coming from. Sometimes young girls of now, because of COVID, 16 years girl, they have kids. That child, by the time to get a birth certificate, he'll be forced looking for food for the child. He'll be forced again to look for money to bribe to get a birth certificate. How are we feeling a country at this time? We cannot provide birth certificate to our people. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I support this report. And I urge a lot, a birth certificate and a ID and a passport is a right for our citizens. They need to be given without these challenges. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mohammed Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to see that there is some goodness on its way for those people who have languished in refugee camps due to various circumstances, and particularly Kenyans who are unable to access their birthrights. Citizenship and birthrights is enshrined in Chapter 3 of the Constitution of Kenya. And therefore, that gives a prerogative to this country to be able to provide their citizens all documents that are required. Having said that, the current circumstance that this report, particularly this petition, looks at, is indeed one that we have realized has been lagging for many years. The current debate that is going around in terms of getting back the rights of the citizenship of those Kenyans who languished in refugee camps and who are unable to access their birthright documents is that it began during the time of President Moi for this decision to be undertaken. It went through various fights, in-fights, out-fights, and various other fights, which unfortunately was not good enough for the poor Kenyans. It eventually ended towards President Kibaki, who gave some directives as well to say that the Kenyans should be able to get their birthrights and get their citizenship documents back. Well, I will go back to the rationale yet. President Kenyatta again took it from there. 10 years of President Kibaki, about 10 years of President Moi, now about 10 years of President Kenyatta. That means it is about 30 years that we've been struggling to ensure that Kenyans get their rights. The sad thing here is the bottleneck, the bureaucracy, the political infights. There are individuals that we know have been fighting politically this process. 30 years is generational trouble. And therefore, we see that the unfortunate circumstance that has gone through this thing is towards ending. Having said that, my previous colleagues who discussed this in this house have talked about 50,000. Anecdotal information indicates that it is close to 100,000 people. I cite that I have worked with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees in 1994 and 95 in Malindi, Marafa refugee camp, and Utange in Mombasa. What I'm coming to here is there are many people in Mombasa, many people in Utange, that's the indigenous people of Marafa in Malindi, that have also faced similar circumstances through this. It does not mean that we are only living at the periphery, that has really touched. If you go to Turkana, Kakuma has hosted refugees for many years. Sudanese refugees, Eritreans, Ethiopians, Somalians, they are there as well. The local indigenous, when they faced hardship in Kenya, where the saddest thing here is this country barely thinks about its citizens when it comes into drought, the current drought that's happening. People go to refugee camps for food so that the United Nations can take care of them, because Kenya has failed to take care of them. And it is an indication today that similar things are happening in my constituency, and you're going to see Dadaab refugee camp going to be flooded again, because I'm a neighbor to Dadaab refugee camp, and I'm also, my constituency is also a hosting constituency for refugees. You're going to see, because of this drought, people have lost their livestock, and they're going to move to the refugee camps again. Will that similarly happen? Chapter 119 does give the opportunity for citizens to get back their citizenship as well, and their rights. The unfortunate thing is that many political leaders were also fighting this, and some of them are crying wolf at this particular time, or having crocodile tears, unfortunately. But I'm quite happy that my people are going to get back their citizenship. I'm quite happy that we have fought enough. I'm quite happy that the government has eventually agreed to ensure that every Kenyan gets their citizenship and their rights within the period of time that they are going through a hardship. And therefore, I'm quite happy that this must be fast-tracked, and we ensure that in the next few weeks, those ID cards are received by the young men and women that have waited for over 30 years to get their birthrights back again. And they
Honorable Odwal Adhiambo.
Oh, I do the intervention. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, the Honorable Dr. Chanda, for enabling me to facilitate by pressing the intervention button. Honorable Speaker, right from the onset, I would like to thank the committee and indeed indicate that this petition raises issues that are fundamental, that must be addressed, and the report of the committee has done justice. Honorable Speaker, I say this because as much as the petition, which has very specific aspects that were affecting a particular category, indeed in terms of the constituency and region, this issue of citizens registration and the problems therein are largely, Honorable Speaker, affecting almost all quarters of the country. Honorable Speaker, in Siaya County, where I come from, specifically Lagos Songa sub-county, we have the similar issues, except that with the Honorable Dr. Wundo, it was Uganda. We have all these young girls who really, up to this point, do not have IDs, because the system and manner in which this is done does not enable them, having moved from one area to come to a different area to settle in marriage. It seems that they get to a point where they really have to get consent or get information from usually their paternal parents, from their fathers, and this creates a problem. Honorable Speaker, we also find that it is largely understood that when you are going to try and get into the issue of registration, then unlike what should be clearly indicated here, a right and a process that automatically takes place, it would appear that there requires to be some added ways of either motivating or making special arrangements so that we would have Kenyans who really do deserve to have IDs that are very fundamental, that is not only useful for the time such as when we are registering, getting to elections, but which without deny them a lot of ability to engage. And so, Honorable Speaker, this is a very important petition, and I would like to indeed thank the Honorable Duale and the committee and the report, because as we handle the specificities that we come through with this particular petition, indeed, the Honorable Speaker, it is clear that we need to relook and we need to take a very specific sense of measure to understand that it is not just uniquely related to the given category, although the nature is one that must be handled the way it is, but we want to ensure that as we deal with issues of registration, as we deal indeed with issues of citizenry, as we in particular make it possible for all Kenyans really to access this, we can see that it is not a matter that we will want to limit, but we hope that as it is handled, it will cover. I want, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, because I am a member of National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity Committee, Honorable Speaker, I also am the Vice President of the High Level Advisory Group that deals with eliminating violent extremism and terrorism, to share and convey that during the 142nd Assembly, Honorable Speaker, that took place in Austria, Vienna, part of what was clearly marked by all parliamentarians is that we ensure that we find ways by which particularly our youth are not in any way excluded, because there is a way that we sometimes find that we provoke and create areas which give young people a challenge. So, Honorable Speaker, as we go to the 143rd IPU, which is taking place, Honorable Speaker, from the 26th to the 30th, it is a key issue that as members of Parliament, we are discussing how we ensure that we do not deny any of our youth what is their right, because sometimes this leads to results that are undesirable. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support.
Honorable Chanda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the tendency of human beings, just like plants, there's a tendency of plant roots moving towards where there's water. Then there's also this tendency of plant leaves and stems moving into the direction where they can have proper sunlight. This also happens with the human beings. Immediately there is food in the next door and your homestead doesn't have food, the tendency of either your kids or your guests or anybody else who are in your home moving to the other direction is very high. This has happened, and it happens in very many ways. It happened now, like we are seeing the case of refugees having the camps in the communities around Dadaab, where now kids or people move into the camp not as refugees, but going into the camp as refugees, in quote, but for purpose of accessing food. I think this is normal. It happens even in ordinary life. Like now, Undo is gone, by the way, but I would have brought this as a good example. There are some fraudulent philanthropists in somewhere in Budalangi. Now they are trying to be very philanthropic with some gifts. So people are moving from Funyula to Budalangi, and also people are also moving from Bondo to Budalangi in the guise of changing voters' cards. That's already happening. Because now one wants to change to be a voter the other side, because the other side is mentioned that if you cross there will be maize, there's constantly not fuel but mafuta taa or mafuta ya kupika from time to time, because the philanthropists are supporting flood victims. So that tendency is there. The same way we are seeing it, Kenyans crossing into Uganda and Kenyans crossing into Tanzania. It's a normal tendency. But the biggest problem here is, Mr. Speaker, where the government has had some deliberate ways of how to recognize stateless people in this country. The Shona are now recognized here in Kiambu. The Pemba are under consideration somewhere in the coast. And there are very many others who got into this country before independence. They are getting tracked and they are now able to be identified, and they are getting some form of registration. Why is it so difficult for a government to move into a camp in the neighborhood, people who are born in the neighborhood and move to the camp, to get or to sort out the issue of registration. I think that's where there's the problem. The tendency of moving, in my view, is not a problem. But when people have moved, why is it so difficult to get a person who moved into the other camp or into a camp from the community because of food and now wants to come back because the camp is closing or stuff like that, is unable to be identified as a member of the local community? I think this is where there is the problem. It's like it's deliberate. It's not something that one wants to sort out. The biggest issue is that when the stateless agencies are now getting properly recognized, and we looked at that in this parliament just the other time, I think it's last year, where now they are getting recognized and they're getting registered to be people. It is impossible to operate in this country minus a registration in the name of an ID. You are simply not a person if you don't have an ID. You are a kid, yeah? Even if you are 80 or you are 40 or whatever you are like a baby when you don't have an ID, because ID is everything. Even if somebody sent you here money in the name of, even if you faked a name and got a Safaricom line or a Airtel line, somebody sending in 1,000, but you can't get it. You can't get it because it's ID. So I want to believe that, Mr. Speaker, if the government was serious, some of these things were not as difficult as the difficulties they have faced in sorting out people who are clearly stateless and people whom we inherited with independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Abdi Yusuf. Honorable Abdi Yusuf.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak. I just want to say how delighted I am that at last we have come to the end of this particular episode of our citizens who have been excluded in those two neighborhoods that have been mentioned, and we are about to give them justice and equity. Mr. Speaker, I would say that Kenya is an artificial colonial creation, and our borders were developed as a result of our colonial experience and our colonial history. So are many of the African countries. We are now shackled by these lines, often drawn by mindless and drunk English, French, or Portuguese colonial officers. And as a result of that, exclusion has meant and been a part of a major source of conflict and radicalization among those who feel excluded and rejected in their borders, in their colonial borders. As a result, many wars and conflicts have been fought over these colonial borders, millions displaced and made into refugees, and thousands have been killed. So Africa needs to unshackle itself and move towards integration and a borderless continent to achieve its dream enshrined in the Africa Union Vision 2063 of a united, economically advanced, and a prosperous Africa. And the only way we can do that is by rethinking and reviewing the colonial border relationships that we have. And also, within that context, the African people who found themselves struggling for no reason whatsoever or no blame on their part, and who have become victims of these bureaucratic systems that have come into place after the end of colonialism. One would have expected that African leaders would come together and resolve these problems of the colonial borders through an African solution, so that we benefit from the human resource that straddles our borders, we benefit from the economic output of those regions, rather than spending money and energy in conflicts that never end and never result in a sustainable solution. Our colonial history has meant many of us have never been registered or accepted as subjects or citizens. As a result, the children and the grandchildren of these people are even today excluded and remain discriminated or criminalized in independent Kenya. We must reform and decolonize our citizenship registration. I know many residents of my own constituency are invisible because of this misfortunate situation that they've inherited because their parents or their grandparents were never registered. It is also important to consider the issue of refugees afresh. Refugees are not a problem, but a major social and economic resource to the host country. We must change our bureaucratic mindset that characterizes refugees as a problem. Wealthy nations, better equipped than us, have seen the benefits of the entrepreneurial skills and the resilience and the power of immigrants. And in recent years, they have been draining the refugee camps like Dadaab of the creme de la creme of the African refugees there, who have been rejected by their own brothers and sisters here. These people are now in those countries as scientists, doctors. Recently, when they had the COVID crisis, some of the major breakthroughs in the development of the vaccines were made by immigrants who had arrived in those countries as refugees. So I want to appeal and say that we really must look. Kenya has sacrificed, but it now must become part of the problem. And we must look at those refugees who are born here as Kenyans, not as aliens who should be pushed to a country that they don't know, they have never been, and they will never be part of. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Wanyonyi Kevin.
Protecting your deposits. The Kenya Medical Training College will hold its 90th graduation ceremony on December 2nd, 2021. Visit www.kmtc.ac.ke for more information on the graduation, training programs, and application procedure. KMTC, training for better health.
As long as their life could be improved a bit, I'll feel a little less guilty.
Get more court officials. Make it big so that everyone's talking. I just want the whole world to know.